Welcome to Tea Time with Talent Acquisition, the podcast aimed at fostering knowledge and sharing stories within the vibrant talent acquisition community. There's no surefire way to accomplish anything in life, but with each conversation, we aim to delve into diverse topics and present fresh perspectives to empower you, our fellow colleague, on your own journey to success. I'm your host, Eden, and for the next hour or so, I'm going to be joined by an experienced talent acquisition expert who prides herself on truly getting to know what makes people ache in their career. Not what they want to do in their career, but what's going to make them love coming to work and doing what they do best. Looking closer at her own career, she's helped drive processes, structure, and culture into several highly successful teams, including the fully remote team that she works with today, leading the global talent management efforts. Now, looking to part her own knowledge to help the wider talent community, it is an immense pleasure of mine to share the podcast with her. So when you're ready, grab your favorite tea or coffee if you prefer, and join me in welcoming today's guest, Melina from Journey. Thanks so much for joining.
Thank you so much, Eden, for having me again.
Again, yeah, good point. So look, I always like to just dive straight in and do an icebreaker question. So we've changed it up for the second season. So for this one, what is one thing that you feel everyone in our field, so talent acquisition, is doing, but you believe it could be improved further?
That is a really good question. I think what comes first to my mind, and I'm not taking even myself out of this equation, is ghosting candidates. I think that's a huge part in our business. As I said, I'm not taking myself out of the problem because I know that I have done it, not on purpose, obviously, but I think it's a problem in our business because we get so overwhelmed with applications and it takes so much time to evaluate candidates. That sometimes also systems mess up. Like I always had problems with ATS systems, which are really sometimes mess things up. And yeah, I think that's something we really need to work on to find better processes and also finding a better way of letting people know that, hey, we are on it. And maybe it takes more time because we get really overwhelmed by the amount of applications. But we really want to work with you and we really want to consider your application, but it just takes a little bit more time than we thought. So nurturing the candidates throughout the application process is something I really think that companies and also recruiting agencies can work on.
I agree. I mean, there's not really much more I can add to that. I 100% agree.
Right.
It's difficult because I think you hit the nail on the head on every point. You know, you get overwhelmed and there's just that lack of communication, not because you don't want to share, but by the time your day's finished, you're drained, mentally drained, and you need to have that break. And there needs to be that stop, and then it's unfortunate people slip through. Which kind of does, I guess it links quite nicely into what we're going to talk about today anyways, because it all kind of embodies that candidate experience element. So I like what you've done there. So the topic that we want to discuss mostly is around psychological contracts between company and candidate when we're talking about recruitment processes. So this wasn't necessarily a new topic to me, but I was having a discussion with my brother who's just started in recruitment. So he hadn't known what it was. And he's about 6 months into the job, so it's completely understandable. So I'm guessing if he doesn't know it at that level, there might be some other people who probably aren't familiar with the phrase psychological contract. So in your own words, what is kind of the brief Melina overview to what psychological contracts in recruitment actually is?
Yes, thank you so much for inviting me for this podcast to talk about this topic, because I think people and companies especially underestimate the power of a psychological contract, and that's why I took a lot of time to investigate further. I had it in my studies, and basically what it is, in one word, expectation management throughout the recruitment process. So what is really important is that we go through a process of the application comes into my and then I will evaluate the candidate, right? We start to interviewing and we do all those steps. And throughout the process, no matter if you want it or not, subconsciously, we will always have expectations as a candidate, but also, of course, as a company. So it is very much about the expectation and assumptions throughout the recruitment process of the employer, but most likely and especially for the employee. So the concept has mainly studied for the perspective of the employee because it's the employer has more verifications through diploma and the CV and all those things. But the candidate is building an expectation of the company just based on what the recruiter and the hiring team is saying. So all those expectations which are built are in the mind of the candidate. So basically what we do when we hire someone, we have a like normal physical contract, right? And all the like terms and conditions are written down so that if you are, for example, negotiate your salary and you won't like get the exact amount of salary, then you will say, but hey, I have it on my contract. The tricky thing is if we have a psychological contract, someone throughout the recruitment process maybe says, we are having such a beautiful culture, everyone is like treat well, and like all those kind of things. And then you're in the company and then someone is like maybe not treating you well. So you have a certain expectation, but it's not written down. It's just really in your subconscious and you have those kind of like expectation levels. And if we don't manage that well, then, and it happens a lot, people will probably, either get fired in the first 6 months or most likely will even, hand in the notice in the first 6 months.
So how does understanding that and managing that psychological contract actually contribute to creating a successful talent acquisition process?
Yes, I think in my opinion, it is one of the most crucial things in recruitment because this will really determine if this candidate, this like employee, will be successful or not. Because you don't just evaluate people by their skills. You also want to see, are they up for the challenges we have? So if you would ask me, and I think maybe it will come up later, and now I'm like being early, but why is it important? Like, why is it important to get
I'll remove the next question.
Perfect. Why is it important to integrate that as a company? Because I think if you find someone who has the right skills for a job, but is not up for the challenge because you don't like you just sugarcoat everything, it's basically honestly, it's basically like dating. If you just tell all the good parts about yourself in the first dates, then someone will be disappointed at some point within the relationship. So if you're being honest and say like in the beginning, these are the challenging things I'm challenged by right now, and these are really things we're looking for. This is something which is not working in our company right now. Then someone can decide for themselves, is that something I really want to take on, or is this something I don't? Because someone who will then say, okay, the company has this and that, and might be, like sound a little bit more challenging, but actually I really like that because, for example, some people don't like a fast-paced environment. So like they need to be very flexible and adaptable of all the things which are like people will just throw things at you. And some people will thrive in that environment and some people will just drown in it because they have maybe not good boundaries with work or they people please, whatever. There are many like ways of seeing things. So if you're really up for the challenge and say, oh, I thrive in that environment, then I know for myself, this is going to be my job. And I won't be surprised when I join the company then. And then I'm like, oh, this is exactly what I was expecting. And this is my decision that I actually wanted this. So it gives also for the candidate way more commitment for the challenge than a candidate who got sugarcoated by the problems and all the things which are going on in the company. And honestly, also from just one thing I would like to add is from all the interviews I had in the past when I was like, hey, I want to be frank with you. this is what's going on right now. This is some difficulties we have in our company because, for example, our company is growing very fast, and with change comes always some adjustments.
Yeah.
So you have to be adaptable to all those kind of adjustments. So this is something I'm always looking for in the soft skill for the people I'm looking for. Are you able to adapt fast? Are you flexible in that? Are you okay that yesterday ChatGPT was not on the market and now it's on the market and it changes an entire company? Are you okay with that? Because your work from yesterday might not even be relevant today. So these are so many things which are so important to check in the first steps of the recruitment process, rather than just put someone, oh yeah, everything is perfect, and then they join the company and they're like, this is not what I expected.
The amount of time as an external, because I think they're a little bit more honest to us sometimes. But the phrase I've been missold. And whether or not it's
Yeah.
true all the time, you have to read between the lines. But I was told one thing and I get on site and it's completely different. Things can change for sure, and especially if you've got notice periods of 3 months. Taking that AI ChatGPT element, 3 months ago we was all just playing around with the release of 4. Now we're creating our own custom GPTs. It happens, and that's inside someone's notice period. So it will
Yeah.
obviously, there are things that can happen, but yeah, that element of expectation management, I think we try our best to kind of manage that as well. And I think you're absolutely right. I think a lot of, and this isn't to say they're doing it wrong necessarily, but a lot of TA teams are kind of hit with quite hard hiring numbers sometimes, and it's
Yeah.
just putting people in process in some cases. Not all, don't get me wrong. But if you're really, really, really honest with yourself, and same thing, I've done it as well. You just send someone because you need to get someone out, really, in some instances. Is it right? No. You probably should just not waste that person's time, but I think everyone has probably defaulted to that at some point.
Yeah.
How can in that first course, you said it's really about that very first time interaction you're having with them, set that scene. You gave a couple examples. These are challenges, these are the kind of issues we're facing. How can you do that in an authentic way where it doesn't sound like you're bad mouthing your own company, if that makes sense?
Yeah, it's a thin line. I understand. It's very thin ice you're walking on, because you
Mm,
don't want to be like, oh, my company has some issues, and you are you up for that, you know? So I really understand that question, and it makes a lot of sense to talk about that. Um, it's always about having, I think, the emotional intelligence to see where is the person coming from, um, and giving them the honesty of okay, this is not a problem in our company, because honestly, every company on this planet, every relationship, they have some topics to work on. It's not that every company is like, oh yeah, everything is just rainbow and everything is perfect and there are no problems at all. Every company has just some topics to work on where they can improve, because that's how we grow as a company. If everything is perfect, we wouldn't move on. Also in humanity, if everything is perfect, then how can we move on and um, have the evolution and
yeah.
the process? So the company needs it as well. And that's why I really like to phrase it in the sense of hey, this is what's working very well. And this is also, I also like to bring in a personal touch of telling the candidates why I like to work for Journey or for the company, to tell them why did I decide to join the company, and what do I see now, working for a year now there, what I really like about it, but also what do I see as challenges. And every work environment, and I'm not even talking about specific companies, but work environment and industries have their challenges. So a startup is maybe a little bit more chaotic. Can you deal with it? And it's not a problem. I'm not bad, talking bad about my company.
You're
I'm
setting
just
the
saying
scene,
how the
okay.
yeah, I'm just setting the
Yeah.
scene of we're in a startup, and sometimes maybe things are not the processes are just in the we are just building them. So are you okay with a little bit of chaos, and then also bring some organization in it? Because I love that personally. I would feel very, I think, stuck in a corporate environment. Never say never, but right now I think I would feel stuck in too set in that sense. But some people rather like that.
Yeah.
So it's just really about finding your own preferences and ask the candidate about their preferences and just giving them a very honest picture of it. And I'm not talking in the sense of like you have to say the negative things, just use the honest ways. And that's why I don't say we have that problem. I'm just talking these are challenging things.
Yeah.
But for some people, these are not even challenging. So it also depends on what person you're talking to.
I think then that kind of segues from effective communication, right? Your role as a TA, recruiter, hiring manager, you need to be comfortable
Yes.
communicating challenging aspects of the company in a neutral or reassuring way. There's a little phrase that
Yeah.
I adopt quite a lot, and it's basically I'll pitch the company or I'll pitch the opportunity to the individual, and I say, look, that's the good stuff, that's the sell. My job is to sell, right? I'm the recruiter, but take that
Yeah.
out the equation. Now I'm not a recruiter. I'm your friend. This is the honest
Mm,
side that I'm seeing. And fortunately, I've worked with a lot of
exactly.
companies for multiple years, so I can see the challenges they faced, and we own things head on. They've struggled with diversity and inclusion in the past. We own it up front because they're going to find out eventually, and then we talk to them how they've overcome it and
Mm.
what they're doing. And there's the phrase is, this isn't to scare you. This is the honesty. And then this is your chance to
Honest,
get off the roller coaster. If you don't want to do it, totally fine with it. I accept that. I wish you good luck, but at least I've told you up front you have everything now.
yes. Honestly, and I think also from a psychological perspective, you want to be in charge as a candidate for your own decisions in terms
100%.
of where you're going to spend your next like time with, because we're working at least like most of the people 40 hours a week, maybe even more, some less. It doesn't matter. We spend so much time at work.
Mm.
So you want to make a very like thought through decision. How can you make a thought through decision if someone is not telling you the whole picture? It's like getting in a relationship with a stranger. You want to get to know the person or the company in that case to really understand what I'm like what am I expecting here? What is happening here? And to make a really clear picture is giving the responsibility from the recruiter and the hiring team to the person, which then also makes them feel, I think, valued. Because if I ask you for your decision and like giving you the room for your responsibility, I think that will make you feel more valued in the end than rather than just telling you all the good stuff
Yeah.
and then just selling you on it. So I think, and I'm noticing that throughout the process as well. You have no idea how many people thank me for the process and how honest I was with everything, because then they feel like they have a big picture and then they can decide for themselves if they're up for it and if not.
Yeah.
I'm thinking of a case where someone said this is not my thing, or where someone was like, but I can't even think about it. I think every candidate was really grateful for me being so honest about it. And it's surprising because you're saying, hey, this is what we're like, this is the challenge we're facing, this is
Definitely.
what's going on. And you would even think, oh, like now I'm talking negatively, but actually they really, really appreciate it, which is wonderful and shows a lot about human psyche, that we do appreciate the honesty, even though it's sometimes a little bit more tough.
They would just want to know, don't they? They just want to make sure that there's no stone unturned, or as much as they can control, they are controlling it. Um,
Yeah.
I mean, you mentioned expectations management. Again, fully agree with. But what other key areas do you think kind of create that psychological contract outside of expectation management?
Mm. So the basics are what you have to talk about. If I understood the question correctly, is you need to talk about management style.
Mhm.
Like one part is how is the person led? And also, again, so important, you can tell someone, oh yeah, like he's giving you lots of freedom, when you actually know as a recruiter that your colleague is maybe more someone who likes micromanaging. Which is, I'm not saying this is wrong or right. I'm just saying it's important to know your colleagues and to know the people they will work with, so they understand, because also there are people who like
Yeah.
micromanaging. So just being honest about it, like how's the leadership style? How's the team? How's the culture? And I'm really talking about culture. This includes work times. how flexible is the company really? So for example, in my recruitment process, I'm always talking also like when we talk about quote unquote negative things, we are a startup. The work which we are having is never going to end. It's like we have worked for years, I think. So it is very important that I'm able to say, hey, how good are you in setting boundaries with work? Because your to-do list will never stop. So if you can, like, if you have work for 100 hours a week,
You're still gonna have more to do.
so are you yeah, you still have a, like you still have like a long, very long list of to do. So are you able to be okay with that and not feel stressed? Because I understand the concept of that. So I am not stressed when my work gets longer and longer and longer because I know even if I would work 100 hours, it won't get done. So it is okay for me to set the boundary with my work. Are you okay with that as well? So being flexible and we're talking about the flexibility at work and talking about the management style, talking about psychological security as well. How open am I, or am I allowed to talk about my opinions, or is it also maybe that in meetings people are not really getting like taking time for it, etc. Like all those kind of things and like criteria for what people look for when they are looking for a job you should like take into your recruitment process and talk about it with the candidate. I think to give them such a big picture that they can decide, am I up for this challenge, or is this maybe also something which is too much for me or doesn't work for me? Because honestly, I really think that I rather have a candidate saying, you know what, this is something I like. I don't think I will like that, and then I'm okay with that because then I can look for someone who says, oh my God, I thrive in exactly that. Because then someone is way more committed
Yeah.
than someone I will just talk into that.
We're gonna look at. I'm gonna do the pun. We're gonna look at Journey's journey on I know. I was
Yes.
waiting for it. On your psychological
No, I love it.
contract in a moment. Because I'm curious because you mentioned all these different elements, and in my mind, I'm sitting there thinking how a team could do it. But instead of just thinking
Mm-hmm.
from my perspective, I'd rather know how you and your team have actually created that and gone through that motion of deciding how do we bring that element into our process. So we'll get into that in a moment. But is there any key
Mm-hmm.
indicators, either from your own experiences or conversations you've had or what you've learned, that determine the health element of the psychological contract? Because once it's created, you're like, yeah, this is great. You know, we're making everyone happy, everything's good. But then 6 months down the line, you've
Mm-hmm.
expanded, your team's new, and then you're back to square one. So how can you keep
Yes.
track of that? And again, back to the original question, any indicators, any metrics that people should be aware of?
Yes. Honestly, I love this topic because for everyone who's a little bit skeptical about those more psychological things, um, you can measure it. There are lots of KPIs where you can work on. So I will come back to that in a minute when we talk about how you can implement it in the team. But just one thing I implemented at Journey is to measure it by talking to the candidates. In the first month, in the third month, and then in the end of the probation time to talk about how did I manage the expectations? How do you feel? Is it exactly what you expected? And also, on the other hand, with
Sorry
the
to
hiring
interject. So
manager,
you asked
how,
about your management expectations. So we're talking about how you managed it from that recruitment process, not from the company's
yes,
perspective.
well, no, obviously I'm talking for the
Okay.
company. How did I manage the expectations for also my entire hiring? I'm talking for my entire
Okay.
hiring team. Like, how did we manage the expectations and what did you actually experience right now in the company? And then in the first month sometimes you will get a different answer from 6 months, but it's still important to get through the process and then you can measure it, which is insanely good because then you really see and feel if you manage well, because that is so important for the success of the employee and how committed they are for the company.
I guess the learns you can gain from people to say yes or what is the no's you want really, or the not exactly right, because that's where you get your learns to go back into the process and how do we improve. So I
Mm,
imagine at the beginning you might get more no's than yeses if you're just starting this journey. Hopefully not too many more, but your plan is to keep
mm,
tracking, keep going back, right?
yeah,
Okay.
of course, it's very important.
So let's bring this to journey. Let's bring this to a real example. So talk me through your
Hmm.
process. how do we determine, actually, let's start, when did you determine that we want to focus on creating that psychological contract, or we want to bring that aspect to light in our recruitment process?
Yes. Honestly, it starts already on the website. How do you picture your company? If you just picture your company on the website as happy, clappy, everything is perfect, and amazing pictures from offsite events, and you have a long list of benefits and etc. But then you actually start at the company and the culture is horrible and it's very toxic and like a toxic environment and stuff, then don't please even put it on the website. Either work on the culture itself in your company, or don't picture it like that. And you can be very neutral about it. That's okay too, because like it's a process. But don't picture it as everything is perfect, and then in the end, the reality looks very different for um, the most of the
Yeah.
people of the company. So that is the first start. How do you picture the company throughout your website, and especially obviously the career
Mhm.
side? And also putting things like we have a very good salary range, and then you apply for the job, and then the salary range is not what you thought at all. These are just things like you build expectation by the things you're showcasing, and you're also telling on the website, and also in the job description. So this is the first very important step. Picture it as like very maybe more neutral rather than all is happy, and we just, because I know the market is difficult. We all look for highly like skilled professionals. So everyone is just like, please come to us. We're the perfect company. But people who will enjoy the challenge you're looking for, like you are having at the company, will find you at some point, and they will also enjoy it way more than you just picture it in the perfect way, and then someone applies who actually couldn't see the challenge itself.
As you're
So
talking,
that's the
sorry, just to jump in, I've got a picture in my head. You might have seen it, maybe, depends on what your Instagram algorithms look like. But for some reason, I clearly see this one a lot. It says expectation management, what you get pitched to role is high-paced, octane environment, crazy startup, and then what the reality is, and it's a picture of a cubicle, like a typical American style office back in the day. They said this is your fast-paced environment, but it's so true. I mean,
yeah.
obviously, I read thousands of job descriptions over the course of the career. As an external, my role is to have a look and see who's hiring. The amount of times I've
Yeah.
seen we are the fastest growing in dot dot dot. And apologies now if Journey uses that. You could use it. You are fastly growing, but then you look at how many people they've hired, and they've hired like 2 in 6 months. I'm like, that is extremely slow,
Mm,
or you haven't got the backing to use that
yes.
phrase. The amount of like buzzwords that people are using, which now makes so much sense
Yeah.
as to what you're saying there about, for me, I've never wanted to work for that company, so it doesn't impact me. But if you're a candidate going brilliant, fast pace, and you get there and it's a snail pace, complete different mentality of
Yeah.
what your expectations were.
And this is so interesting to me because, and again, I think I like to just use the picture of dating because it's so similar. I feel like, but if you're saying in the first dates, yeah, I'm such an active person, and but in the end, you're someone who rather enjoys reading a book on the couch or just like watching a really nice series, which is okay. There's nothing wrong or right in this. But if you're picturing this, then someone will have an
Yeah,
expectation and wants to do stuff with you. So if you're picturing that instead of just being honest, then you will not find the right person for you. And this is also, you can apply that on the recruitment as well. Because if you're saying we are a company who is more steady, we don't have a fast-paced environment, we have structured processes and stuff, maybe this is for someone who actually has a very stressful private life, and they will actually enjoy the like the normal pace, and they enjoy the like not being like in chaos and whatever. Like people will enjoy what you will show. Not everyone, but this is just not wrong or
not
right. But
everyone's right for every
please just
company
be
anyway.
authentic.
So it makes no difference. If that group
Exactly.
of people aren't right, you've saved yourself hours of screening time. You don't ghost as many people, linking
Yes.
back to the very first question, because you don't see as many people because you're authentic and you're genuine, and people get that.
I so agree. And this is something then if you will be in the first date and say like I really enjoy reading a book, and someone says, "Oh my God, me too." sitting together and doing it together then will be such more like an enjoyable moment rather than having someone who's looking for someone active. And this is yeah, I really think companies should do that way more, and we should picture way more of how the culture is, how are the processes, is it more a fast-paced environment or is it more a structured one? Because then people can actually find the right people will find their way to them way faster. And then yes, maybe some people will not apply for that role, and maybe you will even lose some really good A players. But someone who will thrive in your environment will be a better A player than someone who has just a really good CV. I really believe that.
Agree. I like that. I might quote that. Obviously, I'll link back to you. Don't worry. So we're going to take a look at
Love
our
it.
website. We're going to look at the imagery. We're going to be neutral, or we're going to
Yes.
go to the way we're actually doing. We're going to take a look at kind of what
Yeah.
creates our company. Then what's the next step?
Mm-hmm. Yes, and then you have to train the recruitment team, because the recruitment team is most likely the first contact point, right? So it starts with what's the response time? So this is again expectation management. And I'm not telling that I'm doing everything right as a recruiter. We always have some improvements to do. But what we're doing, for example, is we set already an expectation management and how long the reply time is from us. Like we will say, thank you, we received your application, and you will receive a response within 1 or 2 weeks. Sometimes for some roles where I get a lot of applications, I even exchange the time to maybe 3 or 4 weeks, which is incredibly long. But as I said, I want to give everyone the same chance. And how am I supposed to see through 3, 4, 500 applications when I have just 1 or 2 weeks, especially when you hire for multiple positions.
What jobs get you 300 to 400 applications?
For example, we had an intern position we just opened for 2 hours because I got already so many applications, I think like 400 or something, that I was closing it after 2 hours because
interns
it was
out there
not
get
possible.
creative with applying for jobs.
But not even that. I have to say, working in the industry we are in Web3, and this is like an incredible, exciting industry. That's why we don't really have a problem with the amount of applications we receive. And I know a lot of recruiters will hate me for saying this.
I mean, it's fine. I think the first time you messaged me back about supporting our projects, you messaged me and said, I'm happy to help, but we don't need recruitment agency support. I'm like, that's cool, Melina. I actually want to pick your brain about knowledge. So I'm glad that you're happy in your position. So it's all good. But yeah, I mean, I think it depends what industry you're in, right? As you say, Web3 is kicking off, sustainability,
Yes.
hydro, that sort of stuff. That also does
Yes.
well. Then you get industries government-based, e-commerce, maybe not as sexy. Apologies to anyone who's sitting in those industries listening, who might receive less applicants. So it swings roundabouts.
Yes. I understand. So that's why I don't want to just put it on every industry. I know this is very rare. I love being in this industry. I love also because I'm way better at my skills are more in evaluating people rather than finding the people through sourcing. I can do it obviously, but I enjoyed way more to go through the evaluation from the candidates. But besides that, as I said, set the expectations already in terms of let people know what are the next steps. I also like to think that telling people what's next is so simple, but telling them, hey, this is what you can expect. Not only a message in 1 to 2 weeks, but also what is happening now. So sending a message, automated message of okay, your recruiter received your application. They go through the application the next 1 2 weeks, and after that you will receive that step, and explaining and making, because honestly life is already so unpredictable, and we have so many variables in life which are so difficult for us humans to grasp, because we humans tend to have more, we want to control things and we want to know things, but there are already so many things in life which we don't know and where we have to just trust. So give them a sense of security and a sense of stability through making them know, letting them know how the next steps look like. And especially for young professionals who are a little bit more excited maybe than senior positions when they apply, it's very helpful. That also honestly, also as a recruiter, it helps you to minimize the questions which are coming then in the next 1 or 2 weeks when people ask, hey,
Yeah.
what's happening with my
Well, you've already
application?
answered it straight
So
up
it
for
also
them.
minimizes your
Yeah.
workload. Yes,
So you,
exactly. And people feel way more relaxed. I can tell. And I talk about that with my candidates
so you
as well.
train your talent acquisition team to create the process that keeps the communication pretty clear. You know, you're letting everybody know where they are in the
Mm-hmm.
process, what's happening, what stage they're at, and that's done throughout the process. And how are you, I guess, adjusting that element? Because you're right, the recruitment team are usually going to be the first point of contact, recruitment or HR or whoever,
Mm-hmm.
depending on the company. How are you adjusting
Yeah. Yeah.
that those communication touch points based on the contract in general, and based on kind of feedback you receive? Do you kind of do you review it periodically, like say every 3 months, every 6 months? Is this still relevant, or do you just kind of create a process until it
Mm.
really is not working anymore, then you reevaluate it at the same point? Hopefully that makes sense.
Um, yeah, I know. I think I understand where you're coming from, but I don't think I'm gonna change it a lot because the process is not changing a lot. Like we will still need 1 to 2 weeks. We will still have first the recruiter and then the hiring manager. So I really think I haven't adjusted it as much, but as we go through adjustments, I will always look at that process step as well. Because as I said, the psychological contract is for me one of the most important recruitment skills you can have or like something you should consider. So that's why I always look through the lens of a candidate when they go through the process and we are having changes of how long will it take, what would I expect. And also sometimes I am asking people to go through the process and then understanding their fresh perspective of like, how did you feel? What are your expectations? And especially when you're hiring people and then have conversations with them within the first month, the third month, and then the last month of the probation time. How did you feel? How, like, what was your expectation? What were your assumption throughout the process because of the things I or the hiring team said? Also, the pitch. The pitch is so important about the company. People tend to just really sugarcoat things in the pitch, and um, I really love to talk about journey and how exciting the things are, but I also like to explain this is our mission and this is like what's working well and we're changing and the change means but also adjustments in the process. And I really just love to not tell a story, but to take people in and give them a view, like a behind the
Yeah.
scenes. Like, because all the things they can see on the website is boring for them. Like, if you just tell the company story, they can see through that. And honestly, I also expect from from my recruitment perspective, I expect people to look at our website and understand a little bit of what we are doing and see the history and all the things you can just
Yeah.
read through. I expect to like the knowledge that you have this kind of knowledge. So I want to like dive deep into like the company, where we're standing, what is going on behind the scenes right now, what you can't read on the website. And I think that is way more exciting. And also what I'm hearing a lot is that people getting more excited to join the company because of that, instead of just going through, we are founded in, you know, like lame. Be exciting. Like work for a company you're also excited for. And I think then it's so much more fun, and it's also so much more fun to get people excited for the job and for
The
the
journey.
company. Yeah. We're
I think
hiring.
there's a few things just from wrap and kind of peel back. So what I'm getting from that is that one, as a talent team, this part needs to be nailed down. It goes hand in hand with your standard process, the contractual agreement that you're having or you're going to hold up as well should be identified and laid out before we start any proactive hiring anyway. If you haven't got one already, go and do one immediately. If you've got one, does it work?
Yes.
Evaluate. Does it need iteration? And then because you are absolutely right. Very rarely do you need to adjust the hiring processes. Couple of positions, maybe, if you're constantly losing out over certain talent, time frames to hire. Okay, fine. Senior exec roles, I believe, have a different approach. Ironically, when we're recording this, I've just posted that episode today, season 1, episode 9, if anyone wants to listen to that one. But I think you're right. Most of the time, process and the contract can kind of go hand in hand and it can stay like that. So it's about putting a lot of emphasis into what are we focusing on and why, so we don't have to keep going back. And then training your recruitment team to kind of go through that process with you. Do you do kind of like role playing sessions with your recruitment team before they get on the phones to their candidates? Like, do you get them to explain the company to you and see when we're saying training, that how are you training them essentially?
Mm. Mm. No, honestly, I think it's just important that you have a session with your team to talk about expectations of the company, of like what would you expect when you see from Journey, like from the website. So, for example, if you have a lot of happy pictures, then you expect that you have a lot of offsites. So this is like all the assumptions you could make, you should write down, and really should see like, is this something I can like take the candidate on the journey with me? So talking about those things, and also talking about, okay, what's going on in our company right now? So if you're challenged by a fast-paced environment, then please take that in your
Yeah.
pitch. So really just talk about the things you're pitching. And also, I think you can do a role play for sure. I think it helps, especially the ones who are maybe not as safe in pitching the company. It's very just up to you how you feel comfortable, because I mean, as a recruiter, I'm pitching Journey multiple, like you can wake me up in the middle of the night and I will be able to pitch it because I'm doing it so many times throughout the day, right? So at some point you're just very confident by doing it by repetition. So just write down the things you want to get through. Write down the things, just some bullet points of the things you think is most important about your company to know. So for example, fast-paced environment, whatever, like it is. And then you can just talk about it with the candidates. And then also, by the way, what I wanted to mention earlier is like, you know how funny it is that our brain is even like has way more understanding when someone is explaining a process. So for example, you talk to a candidate and say like, you know what, I'm sorry, but the process will take 2 weeks longer than expected. Then they're like way more like still engaged with you, because you let them know instead of just letting them
Yeah.
wait 1 or 2 weeks and they hear nothing from you. And as I said, I know we recruiters, I don't have always the time to inform everyone about every step because that's unrealistic, but I try my very best to inform every candidate about the steps, about, hey, this is maybe taking longer because my colleague is on vacation or he's out of office or whatever. If you let them know, then they won't have the question mark, and then they will be way more satisfied with the process. So, as I said, for implementing it, train your recruiters. Really go through the pitch. What are the most important topics you want to talk through? Also, in terms of, as we said earlier, when you like get to know the team and the hiring manager, what is the leader? What management style do we have? What is the flexibility in terms of like working hours, and like all those kind of things, which are really important for me to decide on which job do I really want to take on, and what challenges are we facing. And I think that is very helpful. And the most important part is really to learn from what you're experiencing. That means really talk to the manager and to the candidate you just hired within the first weeks. Just set up a 10-minute call with them and just ask them, hey, is everything as you expected? Or were there differences of what I told you and what you're experiencing now? And do that with the manager as well, because it helps you as a recruiter as well. Did I pick the right candidate for you? Is this like the candidate and the skills we were looking for? Did I evaluate this candidate in the right manner? This helps you to grow as a
I
recruiter a
agree.
lot, especially when you have really deep dive sessions with the hiring manager, because then honestly, and that's why I say it's such a good KPI measurement, because then you can understand, is your recruiting effort also not only working, but is also making the people happy, the team, but also the candidate. And I think that's a wonderful way for
Yeah,
recruitment.
100% agree. I think it's surprising how few people really do that properly. So we built a post-sale process into our process because the last thing you
Mm.
want to do is hire somebody and then have to give the money back and have to find a replacement as an external recruiter, right? let's be honest. So
Mm-hmm.
our post-sale
Mm-hmm.
process is extremely
Yeah.
thorough, and we do touch points as well. It's literally how's day one gone, how's week one gone, how's month one gone, candidate and company. And then we try and find, is there any issues
Yes.
along the way? And yeah, sometimes things crop up. Of course they do. Expectations aren't as it seems. It's natural,
Yeah.
but at least you know. And I think we kind of play on to teams. It's like you should never be afraid. Not afraid, actually, wrong word. You should never be surprised if somebody doesn't extend past probation, company and candidate. A candidate should never
Yes.
ever be surprised that they're being let go, and a company should never ever be surprised that they're not going to
Yeah.
extend. If you got to that point of like, oh my God, we didn't see it coming, you didn't have enough touch points. No ifs or buts about it. You failed that part.
Absolutely.
But it's surprising how many times it happens still.
Absolutely. I'm happy that it doesn't happen in our company because I really think it has to do with what we're doing and that we implemented this topic. And I'm really not saying it's as like we're doing everything perfectly, but I'm just saying that this KPI at least is something we can be very proud of because we really don't have someone who ever like left our company within the first 6 months of the probation time. And I think this is something also from a very like let's see it from the perspective of finances. If you hire someone and then you put in a lot of effort and time to onboard this person, you spend a lot of money on in this period of time because the person is not fully able to work 100% on their own. And then you have to leave the person and then go through the hiring process again and have like 2-3 months of recruitment time and also having the recruiter working on that and then also having your colleagues like because the hiring team then can work on their daily business. They have to like spend time with interviews and stuff. It's actually, I would love to. Oh, now I would love to get into numbers. I really would love to see if there are any studies on
There's
that
some
or
crazy
anything.
numbers that
But
have
yeah,
been put out there, but it's like 100,000 to replace somebody or
mm,
something like that, where you take salary and time. And I mean, I don't know if that's true. There's going to be numbers out there for sure, but I hear exactly what you're saying. It's that return on investment aspect. Spend a couple of hours today, tomorrow, to really nail down this
mm,
process and individually, then expand it to the team, get more
yeah,
information. And even if it takes 2 weeks to get this part nailed, then at least that's going to save you X
yeah,
amount into the future. But I'm going to try and find, by the time this goes live, I'll see if I can find some studies to link to it, because I guarantee the ROI savings will be, so much higher than the cost of actual recruitment.
100%, 100%. It's and it's also honestly just see it from a very human perspective. It's
I
just
mean,
really
also,
annoying
I mean, the
for
team
every
as well.
side. So
The team don't have to keep
right.
churning people. The culture can remain, knowledge can remain. There's so many benefits that come out of
Mm,
spending time focusing on creating that psychological contract correctly. I mean, I'm going to leave it there because it's a really good point to
absolutely.
close up on, and it kind of wraps up the importance of why we should be doing this in general. But thank you so much for taking the time.
Thank you so much.